Welcome back to Conversations with Archbishop Kurtz, and this really is going to be a great segment. A good friend of mine is being interviewed, John Asher. And John, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for the invitation.
Somebody told me that the best way to describe you is a trusted voice. Really?
I hope so.
Really, a trusted voice.
Yeah.
And it's been a trusted voice for many years as a reporter with WHAS and WAVG. And then, of course, now as the primary spokesperson and vice president for racing communication at Churchill Downs. Yeah. And there's a little race every year that we'll be talking about a little bit. So I thank you. I know, John, you've been at the work at Churchill Downs since 1997. So you're really getting close to that 20-year.
Very close. And actually, my association with Churchill Downs stretches back to my first days in Louisville. I came to Louisville in late 1981 and participated as reporter in my first Derby in '82. So I've been a part of every Derby since '82, either as a reporter or a member of the track team. And I grew up, I fell in love with thoroughbred racing. My family was a racing family, like many others in Kentucky and the region, in that we got together and we watched the Derby one day. We all huddled on the first Saturday in May and watched the Derby on television. And I can pinpoint the Derby that got me, 1967, when Proud Clarion won. And for some reason, that one grabbed me, and it never let me go. And
well,
listen,
we're going to talk about horse racing, but I want to first talk about your roots. You came from Litchfield, Kentucky.
Little parish called St. Paul in Grayson County.
In Grayson, and you and your wife Dee, of course, live here, members of Holy Spirit Parish, with 3 adult girls, 3 adult children. And so thank you so much for being here. Let's do this. I think people will end up talking about racing, but let's first talk about the mentors in your life.
Yeah. Well,
if you had to say 1 or 2 people who have really influenced you, who would you say, John?
Well, one of the top goes to my days of that small parish, St. Paul Parish, where we had a Catholic elementary school. At one time we had a Catholic high school there, but it was closed before I got to high school. But St. Paul Elementary was an important thing in my life. I attended my first 8 years of school there and ran into the greatest teacher, one of the greatest influences, perhaps the greatest influence in my life, and Sister Mary Matthias Ward, who now lives in Owensboro. I was fortunate enough to have her for the 7th and 8th grades. Definitely.
To her, absolutely.
Actually, and I got to see her last year at the salute to Catholic alumni. She was there. I hadn't seen her in many years, but I've told everybody over the years that in terms of helping form my brain and my faith and the things that I love, she was the most influential person. In communication, there was a gentleman I worked with years ago in Bowling Green, Kentucky, when I was a student at Western Kentucky University, a gentleman named Bud Tyler, who was a general manager of a radio station I worked at. I worked at radio stations throughout my college years, and he gave me the opportunity to really stretch out. And another gentleman named a couple more in Louisville, a gentleman named Ed Henson, whose family owned WAVG, where I worked, and then a good friend named Brian Rublin, who was my news director at WHAS Radio, and he let us do things and take time to tell stories, give you 30, 35 minutes to tell a story, which is impossible in radio, but yet it happened there. When I was at WHAS, it was one of the great radio news departments, one of the great news operations in America, and I'll always be thankful for the time I spent with Brian.
Well, I was impressed. I love Leadership Louisville. I was on the board there for 6 years, and still I'm a big fan. But so I was really happy when the connectors were announced. Yep. I wasn't surprised that your name was there.
It was a great honor. If you look at the list of people that were on that first class of the connectors, which a group of people by Leadership Louisville's estimation that had a voice of influence in this community, I'm kind of like. I'm not really sure I belong there, but it was a wonderful.
Well, a
wonderful
lot
honor.
of people are sure of that. Now, listen, I'm Catholic.
Yes,
okay.
I've heard.
And so, tell me a little bit about the fact of how your Catholic faith has been an influence in your being a leader.
Well, I think it has. I think the Catholic education was a big part of that.
You mentioned St. Paul.
My years at St. Paul, and went off to a public high school, attended Western Kentucky University, and like any young person, I think your at least if not your faith, your participation may waver a little bit. But
you need to make it your own.
It's always there, and it was a foundation, and it's a foundation in my life now. I'm extremely happy that all 3 of my daughters are graduates of Presentation Academy. They have the benefits of a great Catholic education, and I just think it's just an incredible foundation for my life and the life of my family.
I'm glad you mentioned presentation, because I know that you have been very involved with supporting presentation, as well as the Catholic Education Foundation. And I'm glad you mentioned the salute dinner that we had last month.
It's an incredible organization, has a great leader in Rich Lecklider,
sure
and
does.
does talk about doing the Lord's work.
Yeah.
That organization, as much as any in this community,
No, it
is
sure
getting it
does.
done.
And I know that you all are members of Holy Spirit Parish, so thank you. Thank you so much for that involvement. Now let's talk a little bit about racing.
Okay, we can do that.
Let's talk a little bit about it. Gosh, it would be hard to limit it, but what does get you most excited? What's your favorite part of the Derby celebration?
The easiest answer is everything, because
Yes.
the Derby it's not just the event, although the race itself is a magical thing. It's everything. It's a combination of the tradition, the history, all the horses that have come before it. The 3-year-old thoroughbreds that race on Derby Day, you can trace every pedigree back to 3 foundation stallions that came out of the Persian Gulf a couple thousand years ago.
Right.
I mean, everything is connected. From the earliest days, the trainers here, they have all learned from people who learned from the best, who learned from the best, who learned from the best. And then the celebration, how this community has come together and how the world comes together on that day.
It really puts Louisville in the spotlight.
It really does, and I think, and of course I'm biased. There are other great events. Certainly the Super Bowl, the World Series, NBA championship. Those are all incredible events. But the romance that's part of the Derby, I really think that sets it apart. Find somebody for me, and you can tell me whether you had this experience. And I know since you're an Archbishop, you won't tell me anything is not true.
No, I always tell the truth.
But the first time you were there when my old Kentucky home.
Oh.
When
You know what I called it?
Home,
You know what I called it, Tim? I said it was a liturgy.
Mm-hmm.
It was
That's a great
an
description.
event in which people were swept up, and it was just a beautiful, moving event. 165,000 of your closest friends gathered.
I always tell people when they're going first time, I said, I just want you to get back to me and tell me one thing. Did you have a tear in your eye, or did the hair on the back of your neck stand up, or both when we sang My Old Kentucky Home? So that's a special moment, as is the moment those roses go.
John, I have to say this, that the Knights of Columbus, the Monday before every Derby, I have that great event. I won't miss it, and I know you won't either. But I love when you talk about Derby, and you've done it here. You talk about the history. And you know it the way I used to know baseball players' batting averages. I mean, you just know it through and through. We're all interested in the 142nd Derby. You have a great reputation for picking the right horse.
Oh, certainly. I'm glad they don't rate me by winning percentage.
Yeah. Well, no, but you do it with authority, and you do it also in a fun way.
Yeah.
What gets you excited now about this year?
About this Derby?
Every year's new and different, isn't it?
We have a high bar to clear this year because American Pharoah, who won the Derby last year, went on to be the first Triple Crown winner since 1978. Maybe the most, I did see Secretariat once, so he was a special horse in every way, including his relationship with people. But I don't know that American Pharoah was as good as Secretariat, but he had that same connection with people. He was incredible on the racetrack. Effortless to watch him on the track. It was just amazing. I had a great trainer tell me once it was like he jumped up in the air and the ground moved underneath him. It was that smooth. But he had a great connection with people. When you came to this horse, he would nuzzle up to you and act as if you'd been around him every day of your life. So that's a tough hurdle to clear, especially with the heroics he had and the year he had. But this year, every Derby is special, and I will caution people that Triple Crowns, although this was a long gap, from 78 to 2015, they tend to come in bunches. We had 3 in the 30s, 4 in the 40s, 3 in the 70s, just gaps in between. And who knows what this year's group is going to be. On this day, if I'm looking at major horses, there's a horse named Mohe Men, whose owners are based in Dubai. He's a wonderful horse. More Spirit is a horse trained by Bob Baffert, who trained American Pharoah. He looks a little more special every day. And then we had a champion named Nyquist, who didn't lose a race at 2, and all of those are at the top of the crop. But even with this short time remaining before the first Saturday in May, which is the latest Derby we can have on May 7th, first Saturday in May, a lot will happen in the last 2 or 3 weeks. But the anticipation coming up to the Derby is what not only what might happen on Derby Day, but what might happen beyond. And we saw last year in American Pharoah just how special a good horse can be.
It really was.
They really touch people.
I'm gonna be dividing up my $2. John, we only have a minute or so left, but I do want to ask you one other thing. Yes. I've had the privilege to go to the backside and celebrate the Mass and prayer services for the community there. And I've also had a chance to go back there during Derby week. And I've seen a real community of people coming together. And I don't think I've ever felt as welcomed as I have there. Tell us a little bit about just that community that surrounds Churchill.
And it is a very close-knit community. I think you're a part of something that's, first of all, there's a great spirit. I think working with these horses every day, it gives you a real appreciation for life, and there's a real kinship because most everybody's back there. I'm not going to say it's 100%,
right?
But most everyone is back there because they love the horse. They want to be around the horses. And it's in its essence. Although we're at a racetrack and we place a bet or two, and we do mention God's name, I think during some races sometimes,
sure.
maybe
not.
Sure. But it is. I think it's there's a real spiritual connection you feel back.
Well, there. It's a recreation. At root is recreation. And so we thank you for it. John, our time is up. However, I wanted to say thank you. Thanks for being such a good public figure in the community and in our Catholic Church. And thanks for being here with us for this interview. I really
appreciate this, and I wish you the best thing I can offer to you, which is Happy Derby.
Thank you. Thank you, John. And thanks all of you for viewing this. And please stay tuned now for the third edition and third episode of Conversations with Archbishop Kurtz.